Welcome to Watchman Weekly. This is Chris Ardern, your host, and we can be found at www.watchmanweekly.com. And for printed material, we can be found at www.sounddoctrine.org. And today, I'm thrilled to introduce my guest, Chuck Wilcox. Chuck wrote a book called The Transformation of the Republic that is a recommended read for anyone trying to find their place in this crazy world that we're in today, and the revised history that we've, in one way or another, have become victims of, as we, those of us who are diligently seeking the truth and to find out what is happening, what really happened in the past, and where we're headed in the future, and here at Watchman Weekly, we're just trying to, give everyone the tools to navigate, the deception that is everywhere, and we don't necessarily have to like what's happening. None of us do, to see the way our world is turning upside down, but we feel that the only hope we have is the truth to be able to navigate what's ahead. And with that, I just felt it's been a little while. Been trying to connect with Chuck, and we finally have him here on the show today, and I'm thrilled to introduce Chuck Wilcox. Thanks for being here, Chuck.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, I'm just going right along with the listening audience today. I'm just fascinated by your work and some of the material that you've brought out and deception that you've exposed concerning even back to the founding of our own country, the lies that we've been taught about what really happened. You pretty much come to the point where you have to almost throw out everything you learned in school and start over, and that's what I've done, and I'm just doing my best to piece the puzzle back together correctly. Mm-hmm. And your material, your work has been an asset to me. I've learned so much from you and from our friend Gordon Comstock, who has just been a tremendous help in my understanding. So yeah, if you'd go back as early as you want to start, Chuck, and kind of bring us up to speed with an overview of what we've learned and replacing it with what really happened. That's what I'm looking for. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
All right, then. Well, I guess we have to begin at the beginning. The founding of the country was a big problem. You got to go back to why they decided to create the United States as it was to begin with, right? A lot of it had to do with religious persecution in Europe. You had basically the Catholic Church, the Vatican, was operating through the political sphere of those countries. So the laws of the country and the laws of the church were one and the same, pretty well. And the American people, the British, I guess, they came across the ocean to escape that system of government and set up a new system of government. And America was born finally as a fully formed nation, not on the 4th of July, but on April 30th, 1789. On the 4th of July, they just conceived the idea. But they actually had, on April 30th, 1789, that day was the first time that they had a constitution, a House of Representatives, and a president, all in one. It was the birth of the United States as a fully formed, constituted nation. And the first thing they did on the inauguration was to go to, there's a little church in Lower Manhattan. I think it still stands. That was the very first, that's the birthplace of the nation, right? And it's right near where Ground Zero was. Right? So apparently that little church, that historical building, still exists to this day. And that was the very first national government of the United States. And in that meeting that they had, there was a prayer session given by George Washington, who was a devout Baptist, and he said we should be trusting in God and recognize God for what He's done to help them create that nation. And they understood the fact that so long as they kept to godly principles, then the protection and the bounty of God would be reigned over the nation. Right? And he said it would, if we decide to remove ourselves from that purpose of be ye holy even as I am holy, then that would mean that God would remove the protection and the bounty. Like, yeah, you have to understand. Like God does control the elements. So if you have massive famine because there's no rain, it's not a result of global warming. It's because of God is deliberately cursing that nation. So you have a situation now where the United States is entering into a time of trouble, very much like it was prior to the Civil War. But I'm going to have to get back to the beginning here. So anyway, Washington gave this warning, right? And then they went in and prayed, and so the entire government was kneeling before God and praying for God's blessing on the nation. Now, European monarchs in the Vatican, they had been watching what was happening over there, and they knew that if the U.S. experiment of representative government would prove successful, it meant their own demise, because that idea would catch on all over Europe. The church would lose its influence in the political sphere. For centuries, the Vatican had been engaged in a relationship with Europe's elite, and then came Martin Luther, and then the political fruits of his act had been birthed in the United States. So what the Vatican and the European monarchs under Metternich, the Habsburg Empire, what they wanted to do was try to find a way to destroy in its infancy that new concept of government. Right? It was an unheard of thing at the time, because before that it was strictly monarchy.
Yes.
Right? So in the fall of 1822, well, actually in 1814 and 15, the governments of Austria, France, Russia, Prussia, which is like the Germans, and the Vatican signed an agreement called the Congress of Vienna, and that was for the purpose of reestablishing the principle of a monarchy rule all over the world. And then in 1822, they ratified that, and that's only a few short years after the United States was founded. And they came up with they ratified it with an agreement to well, I have to read the articles here. It's to reestablish the monarchic principle to use all their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist in Europe, and to prevent it being introduced in those countries anywhere in the world wherever it is not yet known. Article 2, was against the liberty, freedom of the press. They said, as it cannot be doubted that the liberty of the press is the most powerful means used by the pretended supporters of the rights of nations to the detriment of those princes, these high contracting parties promise reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it, not only in their own state, but also the rest of Europe. And then, convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep the nations in a passive state of obedience, which they owe to their princes, these high contracting parties declare it to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those methods which the clergy may adopt with the aim of ameliorating their own interests, so intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes. So that they want to reestablish a unification of church and state. And then there was another. Spain had started to go towards that representative system of government, and it so upset France and the the Austrian Metternich there that they decided to use France the money in 20 million francs a year to pay for Austrian bayonets to march into Spain to suppress the freedoms that Spain had been pushing for. Senator Owen, in 1916, put that in the congressional record, and in my book I have it word for word what Senator Owen had written, stating that this Holy Alliance, having put a Bourbon prince on the throne of France by force, then used France to suppress the condition of Spain immediately afterwards by giving, by this treaty, and give her a subsidy of 20 million francs to allow her to wage war upon the Spanish people and prevent their exercise of any measure of the right of self-government. And then they turned around and did the same thing in Italy, sending Austrian troops to Italy, paid for by France, where the people there attempted to exercise a measure of liberal constitutional self-government. And it wasn't until the printing press, which the Holy Alliance so stoutly opposed, taught the people of Europe the value of liberty, that finally one country after another seized a greater and greater right of self-government. But the origin of that was to kill off the concept of every fundamental principle that the United States was founded on. All your freedoms that are cataloged in the Bill of Rights. Right?
I never thought about the effect that the printing press did have on the fact of self-rule, when the spreading of the Bible, from what the printing press brought us. I never thought about what that really meant, because that's how that's how self-rule can work. When people adhere to biblical principles, then it's possible, and up until then it wasn't. They were under the the authority of the church, and how all that changed through the printing press. That's really a point I've never really thought through before. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and it was obvious to a lot of people at the time. There's a book that I have here. It's called "In Defense of the American Policy." Now, prior to the U.S. Civil War, you had political parties rising up, very, very similar to the modern-day Tea Party. Right? Now, back then, prior to the Civil War, there was an upstart party called the American Party. Right? And so this book that I have, it's published in 1856. And I was going through it, and the parallels between what was going on the decade and a half prior to the Civil War erupting and what's going on now, the parallels are astounding.
Oh boy.
Right? Because they had the same beefs, the same concerns, everything that was going on. Immigration was a huge concern. Illegal immigration, right? So, but in the Duke of Richmond around 1840s, I can't find the exact date here, but he said that the Church of Rome has a design upon that country, referencing the United States, and it will, in time, be the established religion and will aid in the destruction of that republic. I have conversed with many of the sovereigns and princes of Europe, particularly with George III and Louis XVIII, and they have unanimously expressed these opinions relative to the government of the United States. So way back when, it was in the mind of the Vatican and the Habsburgs to basically, what they saw was a weakness in the one-person, one-vote system. And what they thought that they could do, and what they actually did do, was establish a slush fund that paid passage for all these papists to come across the ocean into the United States and get citizenship, and then use the vote in order to put in their own people.
Oh boy.
Right? Because their argument was, if we can outnumber their votes, then we have outright control of the government, because then we can place in all of our own people who will be subject to what we want.
Yeah.
Right? And the same thing is happening now with the Latin American people coming up, all demanding the right of the vote. Right? And you had the Bishop of Los Angeles essentially blessing that effort, right? And has been for quite a while. So you've got a lot of people coming up now expecting citizenship so they can turn around and put in, I mean, from top down. Your police officers, I know, or the sheriffs or whatever, they're elected offices, as far as I know. Right? Your sheriff is elected?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that means if we can corrupt or put in a corrupt official,
yeah,
right, then we will. Right? So you've got all so basically taught from the president all the way down to sheriff, all the offices in between.
Yeah, are they doing this? I mean, this is, through the secret societies, and I mean, I know that there's just almost complete infiltration, as far as I know. By the Freemasons, really, and the Knights of Malta, and that web of deception that is behind it. And I'll let you get there, because I'm sure that you're heading somewhere.
Well, in 1852, this is still prior to the Civil War, a gentleman by the name of Charles Chinnicky, who is a French-Canadian priest. He eventually became good friends with Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
He records in his book, 50 Years in the Church of Rome, a meeting that took place in Buffalo in 1852 of all the bishops and Jesuits in America at that time. And the quote was, this is from these bishops, they said that we are also determined to take possession of the United States, but we must proceed with the utmost secrecy and wisdom. What does a skillful general do when he wants to conquer a country? Does he scatter his soldiers over the farmlands and spend their energy plowing the fields? No. He keeps them close to his flanks and marching toward the strongholds, the rich and powerful cities. The farming countries then submit and become the price of this victory without moving a finger. So their immediate plan was to flood the major cities of the United States with brand new immigrants with a brand new vote. Right? So it is with us. Silently and patiently we must mass our faithful Roman Catholics in the great cities of the United States, remembering that the vote of a poor journeyman, though he be covered in rags, has as much weight in the scale of power as a millionaire. And if we have 2 votes against his one, he will become as powerless as an oyster. So let us then multiply our votes. Let's call our poor and faithful from every corner of the world and gather them into the very hearts of the cities of Washington, New York, Boston, Buffalo, Troy, Albany, and Cincinnati. And under the shadows of those great cities, the Americans consider themselves a giant unconquerable race. Let no one awake let no one awake those sleeping lions today, and let us pray God that they continue to sleep for a few years longer, waking only to find their votes outnumbered, when not a single judge or policeman will be elected if he's not a devoted Catholic.
Yeah.
Right? We will not only elect the president, but fill and command the armies, man the navies, and hold the keys of the public treasury. It will then be time for our faithful to give up their grog shops in order to become the judges and governors of the land. And only once that's done, then can we claim that the church, or that the country now officially is under Vatican rule. So they started to do this and agitate essentially for class warfare in the United States, which became the U.S. Civil War.
And everything you're saying, I'm having trouble if you're talking about today or back then, because I know it's all repeating. Cause
it is repeating. It's a great. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. That dialogue you just gave could be applied to then or today.
Yeah. It's the parallels are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's astonishing, actually, with the way that and when you say that the Catholic influence, well, even through the control of the Protestant Church, is the thing that people don't realize. With the infiltration of the doctrine and what have you. They do it by stealth, obviously, just by what you just said.
And they've gone. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, there's so many facets of society that have been infiltrated and corrupted.
Yeah.
So basically, you've got it's. I mean, it's sort of it's like take a look at what's wrong with this picture a moment. Yeah. Who is the very first person? Well, actually, ever since I don't know Ronald Reagan, or right. Maybe before that. The very first person in the world, once a president takes the oath of office, who does he see? The very, very first person in the world after he becomes president. The Pope.
I was wondering if you're going to say that. He really does, doesn't he? Isn't that something?
The Pope.
Yeah. And,
right? There's a reason for that. It's not because, bless me, Father, for I have sinned.
He goes for instruction.
It's going, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's going to get his marching orders.
There's nothing more telling than the picture of Bush Jr., Sr., and Clinton kneeling in front of the body of the dead Pope. You can just see on their faces, the whole story. It's just absolutely eerie, isn't it, Chuck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Reagan officially recognized the how can I put it? It was well known after Lincoln's assassination who actually was responsible for that.
I was going to get you to go into that. Like, it was pretty much public knowledge, wasn't it?
Actually, it was.
Years afterwards, until they were able to suppress it all.
Yeah, I have letters from Brigadier General T.M. Harris. He was a Union general, and he was also on the military commission that tried the conspirators of Lincoln's assassination.
Really?
Right. And he wrote several letters to Charles Chinnicky in the late 1800s. going on and on. He said we knew that Lincoln was murdered on the orders of the Pope.
Yeah.
Right? They knew that. That was common knowledge back then. He says that every citizen and every sojourner in this country who is loyal to the Roman Catholic Church is an enemy to our government of necessity, for he yields his highest allegiance to the Pope of Rome, a foreign potentate who has time and again cursed and anathematized every fundamental principle of our government. He has denounced liberty of the press, liberty of conscience, of speech, and worship as pestilent and damnable heresies. So they knew. And then again, in 1923, an author named Burt McCarty stated that they knew that because the U.S. the politicians were so much in the pocket of the priests and the Pope at that time. In 1920, listen to this. How prescient can you get? The next step in the Vatican scheme is to make war between the United States and Japan after the latter country has been placed under the full dominance of the Jesuits. The priests, monks, and nuns of the Roman Church have been pouring into Japan from all over the world now for many years with that purpose in view. It said the Roman Church had gotten into his country under the guise of Islam, and then after it was well entrenched, threw off its mask, and the Japanese country learned to its astonishment that it was the Roman Church and its monastic orders that had opened its doors to. So in 1923, they were already saying that a war between the United States and Japan was being cooked up.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that book was published in right around that time. So they had, they had a good heads up, and that didn't happen. For another 15, 20 years?
Yep. Right.
So that's how long it took.
Where, if you wouldn't mind me, okay, now, what would you claim the reason that they took out Lincoln? Was it over the greenback? Was it over the control of the banks? Or what?
It was over a number of issues, I believe. Yeah, I mean, they wanted control of the treasury. They wanted the control of the money. They also wanted to... what they were trying to do, essentially, was destroy the concept of representative government, okay?
Right.
And they were afraid of one huge nation, undivided,
Yes.
which would also be very powerful and would be the natural antagonists against what they wanted, right? So what they wanted to do was engineer a class war in the United States, and you have to understand that the Civil War was actually cooked up in Europe and played out on American soil. Right? So that's what was happening there, and they were, and it worked very well. What they wanted to do was establish two weaker countries that would be a lot more pliable.
Yes.
Right?
This is their MO. This is the way. This is what they're still doing today.
Well, I can see a balkanization going on now. You've got a lot of states that are talking about. I mean, some of the northwestern states are talking about seceding and joining Canada.
Yeah.
Right. Because there is a trade block thing going on there between British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and then from the Dakotas down to Colorado and cutting across and including Washington and Oregon and those states, right? The northeast, the northwestern part of the U.S. Is an active trading partner with the Western Canadian provinces.
Yeah.
And that still goes on. I mean, there's a bit, all of our oil.
Now, let me ask you, well, I'm trying to follow the chronology here, but where did we officially stand with our relationship with the Vatican through this period of time? Like Lincoln.
Well, actually, the Vatican had no. They were very way at the beginning of the country. There were very, very few Roman Catholics in the country.
Yeah.
Right, very few. But that was boosted using the finances of Russia, Prussia, France, and those guys, like, you know, those people in that in the Holy Alliance, as it's called.
Uh-huh.
So they used their money and paid passage for millions of people to come across the ocean.
Okay.
Right. But so that's what was going on. They were trying to. They were even before the Civil War. They were already starting to ban Bibles in schools.
Yeah.
So that's not a new thing.
Really?
Right. It took place way back when as well. Right. As soon as the Romanists came in, the first thing they wanted to do was remove the Bible from the public schools.
Yeah, of course they would. Wow, I've never heard that, but it fits.
Mm-hmm. And so, but after Lincoln's assassination, it was a well-known fact that Rome had paid for this hit squad, as it were.
Yeah.
Right. It was. It wasn't just a bunch of guys that got together and cooked up this thing over a few drinks.
Yeah.
They were very well ordered. They met in St. Mary's in Washington frequently, and met at the Surratt Tavern frequently. And who was at the Surratt Tavern as well? A lot of priests.
Is that right?
About a half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
They all got together and formulated this big plan, right? Which was to wipe out the entire head of the government, right? Not just Lincoln, but Seward and Grant and Johnson, right? So to cut the head off the snake, as it were, and then put in their own people who would be a lot more pliable.
Right.
So, but back then it was common knowledge that Rome was behind it. Now, right after that, the United States cut off all diplomatic relations with the Vatican.
See, now that's what I wanted to get from you. I thought that's what happened right then. Officially, yeah. Right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they officially cut off all diplomatic relations with the Vatican as a direct result of Lincoln's assassination.
Yeah, and
now that
was public knowledge then?
Pardon me?
And that was public knowledge then?
Back then it was, yes.
Yeah, until they were able to make it go away. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
history books, because we never heard any of this.
Yeah. So, and that wasn't reinstated until 1984, I believe.
This is what I wanted you to. I thought that was right around 84. Now, why? Because of Reagan?
Right.
Yeah, I'm following you here. Yes.
Right. Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II wanted to get together to try to wipe out communism in Eastern Europe.
Right.
They used the trade unions in Poland in order to, as the entering wedge in that, right?
Yeah.
And when Poland went down, the rest of Eastern Europe followed, right? Okay. And the entire Soviet system fell apart.
Right.
Right. But it began with a union of the U.S. government and the Vatican to finance and support the trade unions in Poland, right? And in order to do that, they drew up an agreement, like they would work in tandem. They would work hand in hand as partners in this, and they signed an official agreement called the Concordat to that effect. And that also meant that the Catholic Church now had an awful lot of political pull when it comes to any law that comes out of Congress. The Vatican has to have some say in it somewhere along the line in order to make sure that it agrees with church teaching.
Well, without going into what took place, I don't even know if we're going to get to talking about Kennedy today, but so for what you're saying, Reagan, Clinton, or Reagan, well, of course, who Bush Sr. basically ran the show under Reagan, Clinton,
Mm-hmm.
Bush Jr., all Knights of Malta.
Yeah, that's true, but Bush also came out of the CIA and the CIA, and the CIA has been Rome has complete control over the entire intelligence
Yes,
field, right? I mean, it comes right out of Georgetown.
right. Out of the Jesuit universities.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right. So there's an incredibly close tie there between Georgetown and the CIA and every other intelligence agency in that.
You're talking the Mossad, you're talking British intelligence. They're all hooked together, aren't they?
They are. They're all part of one great big family.
Unbelievable.
Um,
I got goosebumps right now. It's so hard to even talk about it, isn't it, Chuck? It's so big.
It is. It's so big. You almost don't know where to begin. But I figure, well, I was trying to begin in the beginning.
Hey, we'll we can continue on as long as we want to go. If it's going to take a series, maybe in this first interview today, just give us an overview,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go back and dissect it some more. And I'm, as I say, all these, we try to arm ourselves with the tools we need to face what's ahead.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to stop any of this, but we're going to find our place in it and survive. That's what I, am trying to teach. And obviously we're going to do it through trust in the Lord. But, knowing the truth makes us free.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't like the truth a lot of times, but at least we can work with it. But when we have these lies, lie upon lie upon lie, in our minds that, we've been taught to sit in 8th grade history class and to learn the garbage that, was presented and now having to go back and rebuild my whole structure. It's been, it's a process. You get angry, you hate to be lied to,
Mm-hmm.
but you work through it and you mourn the loss of what you knew. You mourn the loss of your country, because I basically realized that years ago when I first woke up that this country is not what I thought. And it's a process because, you're so ingrained, it's so ingrained in your being. But it's all part of God's plan, I see, because he doesn't want us to really trust in anything but him. And, here we are today. But,
absolutely, yeah. So anyway, right after the Treaty of Verona, the European powers wanted to take control of the Spanish colonies in South America and turn them into church-state entities.
Yeah.
And President Monroe at the time saw what was happening and said, absolutely no way, and came out with what is commonly known as the Monroe Doctrine. And the Monroe Doctrine is referred to periodically in the news or what in history class. I don't know what kind of history classes you get there.
Yeah.
If you're ever taught about the Monroe Doctrine.
Well, I sure am aware of it. I probably, got a piece of it
Mm-hmm.
when I was a kid. I'm 54 years old, so I was still around when there was some truth being taught. But
Yeah.
Monroe was a good guy, wasn't he?
James Monroe, yeah.
He was a good one, I understand.
Yeah, well, he saw what was going on and said, well, there's absolutely no way that European powers are going to have any kind of influence on this side of the ocean, especially in the American sphere of influence.
Yeah.
So he came out with what is called the Monroe Doctrine to force those European powers out of U.S. jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And they knew that it was a big threat politically. When the nation's census, when they started taking the census stats, in 1830, there were only about 318,000 Roman Catholics in America, compared to a total population of almost 13 million.
Okay.
Right. 15 years later, over 100,000 immigrants were arriving annually. 2 years after that, that figure was doubled. By 1850, the number of Papist immigrants entering the country was up to 300,000 a year, and 4 years after that was 500,000 per year.
Wow.
On the eve of the Civil War, the total number of Papists had mushroomed to over 3 million people, about 10% of the nation's total population. So they saw this going on, and then they were keeping their eye on a gentleman named Archbishop John Hughes of New York.
Mm.
Now, I don't know if you saw the movie Gangs of New York.
No?
You haven't seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Well, they actually reference Archbishop John Hughes and how he gathers his people to create violence. Right? He was just telling, that was part of the sermons, go out there and
fomenting hatred. Yeah, that's their MO.
Right. Well, John Hughes had his own newspaper called the Freeman's Journal, and he stated, along with the Bishop of St. Louis, they declared that, and this is in 1850. If Roman Catholics ever gain a sufficient numerical majority in this country, then religious liberty is at an end. So our enemies say, and so we believe. And then they came right out and said that no man has a right to choose his religion.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah.
So this is what was going on prior to the Civil War. They had massive, questionable immigration. The immigrants, as soon as they landed, got the right of the vote, exactly what they're doing now. Right? You have a lot of people coming, illegal immigrants, and now they want to give them the right of the vote?
Yeah.
For what purpose? Right? Here's an interesting fact. If you are in France, even to this day, in France and various other countries, if you come from another country to become a citizen there, you do not automatically have the right of the vote. Right? You're not allowed to.
Yeah.
It's in their laws, right? That any what do they call it? Naturalized citizen or whatever, right? Does not have the right. The only people that could ever have the right of the vote are people that are born there.
Yeah. Right.
Of citizen parents.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here now just thinking through this with the influx of the Mexican, population and what that means. The dominant Catholic, influence there. I'm just processing all this that you're saying right now, and it's hitting me. It's so obvious what part of this has been about. Mm-hmm. Because everybody.
Well, even what the Mexican president Calderon, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe now, came right out and stated that his jurisdiction did not end at the Mexican border.
Yeah,
but extended all the way to wherever there was any Mexican citizen living anywhere.
Isn't that amazing? And yes.
So essentially, he's laying claim.
Yeah.
To all of the territory they lost.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Which includes Texas.
Yeah.
Arizona. New Mexico. California. I don't know if it includes Colorado and Utah.
And now we have, them flying Mexican flags at high schools and things of this nature that it's all coming clear to me.
And it's all being blessed and giving the support of the Archbishop of Los Angeles.
I realize, too, how much of an influence these bishops in the cities have.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the hierarchy goes. And it's tough too, because I'm sitting here now. I try, and I came out of Catholicism. I was brought up in Roman Catholicism,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not bashing Catholic people. We love the Catholic people that are deceived as can be, and this is what this is all about, exposing this, because it's not about your next door neighbor, that is part of this, but it's the power structure behind it is what the real evil is, and the manipulation of these societies. And it is like the octopus is so big, it's just hard to even talk about it, isn't it?
And it's all being helped through the Jesuits.
Yeah.
Right. And
through these universities, and what's more noble than to get an education in a Jesuit university?
Well, the thing is that yeah. Well, it was Samuel Morse explains quite a bit of what the real purpose of the Jesuits is in America. And I have those 2 books up on my website, ctwilcox.com.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get all your links on this show.
They're a free download there. And those 2 books by Samuel Morse are incredibly difficult to get and incredibly expensive if you can.
Yeah, I downloaded those. I have those on my, I haven't read them, but yeah, I know that's good. I'll have to make sure I put a plug in for you for that there. I appreciate all that.
Mm-hmm.
But
the Jesuits, there's an oath that they take, and here's a couple. Here's a paragraph that's very telling. Okay, part of this oath that they have to take states, "I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants or liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, that I will spare neither sex, age, or condition, that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the wall, in order to annihilate forever their execrable race, that when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poison cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, like a dagger, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I am at any time directed to do so by any agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Society of Jesus." And these are people who claim to be following
Jesus.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with that picture, I'm afraid. Yeah. Well, this is where we are. Yeah. This is, and who I just can't get out of my mind is a guy like Tim Russert. Okay. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Tim Russert is he's a papist.
Yeah, and he was, I think he was having some conscience, possibly like Kennedy was, and when he interviewed Bush and what's his name? Who am I thinking of? The 2 Skull and Bonesmen that happened to be running together at the same time. One in 18 Skull and Bonesmen every year come out of
John Kerry.
And it wasn't long after that he had a untimely heart attack. I mean, it's just absolutely eerie, isn't it?
Yeah. But you also have a big-time problem now because you have Mitt Romney, who is CFR.
Yes.
Right, and in one of these, maybe in another show, we'll have to get into the whole CFR thing, the Council on Foreign Relations.
Right.
Which is basically a Jesuit front organization.
It is Jesuit, isn't it? And then we've got Romney, a Mormon. This whole Mormon thing is it's a big part of the deception too.
Yeah.
We take it so deep into Bible prophecy on this show, Chuck. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the fact that when we touched upon it, I don't want to go there because it's a whole other can of worms. But the lost tribes thing, and the Mormons claiming to be the lost tribe of Ephraim. The deception there is so huge that it's hard to even touch, but it's a big part of this end game.
But what you have now, you have a choice between CFR Romney or
Yep.
CFR Obama.
Either
way, you're going to get the CFR.
Yeah.
Right? And
And
it's
then
the CFR that actually dictates the whole foreign policy and the domestic policy of the United States.
Yeah. And also CFR Netanyahu, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's...
my friends talk about all that, and they don't realize that, Netanyahu and Obama take their orders from the same people, for goodness sakes. It's like big-time wrestling, breaking with chairs over the head, when they do all this, this theater with, fomenting this hatred between, or disagreement, however far you want to take it.
Right. And McCain was CFR as well, so that you had the same choice the last election as well. You had your choice between CFR or CFR. Right? You had your choice. I talked to a friend of mine prior to Obama being elected. This was in the summer. And they were asking me my take on it. And I said, well, frankly, it's a no-win situation. You've got death by rifle or death by shotgun.
Yeah, so let me decide. Yeah.
Right. So I guess they voted in death by shotgun
this time around.
And
it's interesting now. It's like they were going to keep Obama in this next term. I don't know. It could actually go either way.
It doesn't matter though.
Yeah, it doesn't matter
because you're voting for the CFR either way.
It's just the manipulation of the minds of the masses is what matters, because they'll be the masses that believe that Romney's going to save them.
It's not. I mean, that's it. So you're choosing death by rifle.
Yeah. Well, see, we know that, but see, the masses still, the public opinion that they attempt to manipulate. It makes you wonder how many people, the people that are waking up, it's still a pretty insignificant number compared to, Dancing with the Stars, population, mesmerized by this boob tube. They're basically still in a coma about what's taking place under their nose. But that's all speculation.
But the bottom line is that it doesn't look good. And,
it does.
And after having gone through this book that was published 10 years prior to the Civil War, called The Defense of the American Policy, where you've got a political party which is almost on many levels, the same thing as the modern-day Tea Party, with exactly the same issues. Right? I don't know, my goodness. They knew back then that they were facing some sort of cataclysm that would entail some aspect of class warfare, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Right? The Civil War was essentially a warfare between class.
Yeah.
You had the rich and hoity-toity industrial states going up against the slightly poorer cotton states.
Yeah.
And they say that it was the issue of slavery was more or less a side issue.
Yeah.
Right, very much a side issue.
Well, scapegoat.
Well, it's like trying to say that if the United States ever goes to war again within itself, that it would be because of, I don't know, gay rights.
Your pick, yeah.
Or abortion, or something equally like way out there that has absolutely nothing really to do with anything. Right? But what they're trying to do now is engineer another class war in the United States.
Yeah. And this is what they did with this issue with the. I'm kind of detached from the mainstream media, but this this killing in Florida with the guy that was standing his ground in his neighborhood, Have you followed that story at all?
Yeah, they're really torquing the hell out of that, aren't they?
It sure did blow that. Something that probably takes place, 20 times a night in any city, USA. They grab it, one story, and
And they say that this guy that's actually Hispanic,
yeah,
they're calling him a white racist or whatever, right? They're really, really trying to torque the living snot out of this whole race thing. They're trying to insert something that really isn't there, right? It was just some Hispanic, like whatever going off and doing it, and so he shoots this black kid, but they're turning it into a black-white issue.
Yeah, and it's these talk points that these, the Associated Press puts out in front of all the mainstream, media outlets. They all just parrot the same story over and over, and the people, buy it. And
and they always seem to gravitate towards the professional agitators like Sharpton and Jackson and those guys who are actually nothing more. I don't even know how they can get the title reverend, like reverend of what?
Oh, it's a big thing.
I don't know any church that they lead. Right, or anything like that. It's okay. So you got like a mail order ordainment or whatever, and it's kind of funny because their attitude is certainly not of God.
Oh no!
Right, their whole demeanor, their whole way of thinking, their whole attitude is very satanic.
Yes, it is.
Right, so they're nothing but professional agitators. They make for great TV and great drama, right, which is the only reason these guys actually get on the news to begin with. But the problem is you've got a lot of undereducated people.
Yeah,
that's
a very kind way of putting it.
Yeah.
I would probably use different words, but yeah, that's what it is, and it's their own fault because it's been all these years of complacency that's dumbed them down to the point where they can't process what's happening.
Yeah.
The deer in the headlight. These conversations like we're having right now, bring on. I'm sure you've seen the deer in the headlight look. It's like they glaze over at the first hint of anything challenging, what they know. And this is all part of this brainwashing.
Yeah.
Taking place. What we're up against, trying to pierce.
And the last. Well, during the Civil War, so you had a Confederacy, and what a lot of people don't understand about the Confederacy, that it wasn't just about states' rights. You have to ask, what rights are these states looking to acquire? That question, you never hear anybody ask that question. They just automatically assume that they were going for very vague general idea of liberties or whatever, right? But no. What the leaders of the Confederacy wanted to do was establish or reintroduce monarchy on North American soil. Well, other than Canada, right, which already is basically, a monarchy for all intents and purposes, right? Yeah. But what they wanted to do was kind of be like Canada. Because Canada officially is a confederacy.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a confederation of semi-autonomous provinces, and each province has their own thing going on, right? But yeah, so this is what they wanted to do in very much the same way. The Confederacy, they wanted to reestablish the monarchic principle on American soil, and they already had crowns ready to give out, right? So they wanted to establish that type of a governmental system back into the United States, a proper monarchy subject to Rome.
Wow.
Right? Because the Davis government, and I have it in my book. It's a 660-page book.
Oh.
So there's an awful lot of material. But I have the actual. I was able to get the letters from the National Archives in Washington, and there's hordes of them. All these letters between the Davis government and the Pope talking about how they're going to go about doing all this stuff, and what the and how they hope that the end result will be. And all this stuff is like prior to Lincoln's assassination. So there was all of this backroom maneuvering going on about what kind of a country they plan on establishing once the Confederacy wins.
Wow.
Their independence, and that was to reestablish a monarchical system subject to the papacy. And that's what Lincoln deprived them of, and that's why, one of the main reasons why he was eliminated.
Isn't that
Because he destroyed the plans of the Habsburg Empire. He destroyed the plans of the Vatican to create two separate countries, much weaker than one great big country, and both pliable to their influence. So, and Lincoln kind of put a monkey wrench into the gears.
But they really did not accomplish anything by his assassination.
Not really. Well, no, they caused a lot of good. But after that, then they were able to work on the rest of the Republican Party with the radical red Republicans, particularly, and right after Lincoln's assassination, they came up with the 13th and 14th Amendments, which effectively changed the nature of citizenship in the United States. Before the 13th and 14th Amendments, a person was considered a citizen of the state first, and because of that, of the country. That was completely turned on its head, where you are now a citizen of the United States corporation first.
Oh, yeah.
And a state second.
That was really big.
Yeah, that's exactly what they wanted. So they figured once they've got that inserted into the Constitution, then they can turn around, and they only have to work on one governmental system, that being Washington.
That was a big thing, wasn't it, Chuck? That was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm realizing that now.
And the 13th and 14th, well, it was the 13th Amendment or the 14th, I can't remember. It was never ratified.
Yeah.
Right, by the southern states. It wasn't. They just rammed it through, and and everybody kind of shrugged their shoulders and went, "Oh, okay," But it was rammed, and it was never ratified, which is a really interesting thing. But that was what they wanted, and they figure once they can change the nature of the citizenship of a U.S. citizen and make them subject to a single governmental entity instead of, however many. Right. That way, once that's established, then they can work on the leadership. And if they can corrupt the leadership, they've got the whole country.
And this is really where it started. I mean, where it really started taking hold, the corruption, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they had their minions even during the Civil War. Meade, during Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Right? He knew they had chased the Confederate Army off the field, right? But instead of going after them, he let them go, and Lee, he only lost, 2 guns out of how many hundreds, right? He only lost 2 guns, but he never went after them. Instead, what happened after Gettysburg was you had the New York draft riots. And the New York draft riots were instigated by Archbishop John Hughes.
Oh, my goodness.
Right? Because a lot of Catholic Irishmen.
Yeah.
Right? So it was a Roman Catholic congregations all over New York. And the priests, under the orders of Hughes, preached that you shall not go to the draft. Or, something to that effect, right? And it caused so you had the New York draft riots kick up. Lincoln knew that it was Hughes that was behind that all, right? Had no choice but to send Meade up to New York, a third of his army. He had to divert a full third of his army to New York to put that down. And so he was unable to go after, to do anything, to follow up, right? And put that war to an end. And so it dragged on for another 2 more years with an awful lot more killed.
Isn't that something?
But the reason Meade never went after Lee is because, according to Chinnicky, and according to some other documents that I've got, I can't look them up right now because I don't know where in my book they are. But he had a Jesuit apparently came to his camp, and had a sit down with General Meade, and basically laid down the law. Right, saying you shall not chase after Lee. You will do something else. That and that something else was diverting a third of his army to go to New York.
Wow, I have heard that.
Yeah, well, it was a big So yeah. I was surprised. I mean, all this stuff when I was uncovering all this stuff, it was one surprise after another, after another, after another. And, oh my goodness, right? And then when you take a look at what's going on now, it's coming full circle. The same things that happened, in almost every detail. So the whole societal mindset, the societal thing, the tea parties, right, and these upstart political, and all of these issues that are taking place now on the news took place 10 years prior to the Civil War. They were exactly the same issues then as they are now. And look where, all you got to do is if things continue the same way that they did then you're in for a world of hurt after this election.
In the time remaining, we could probably go on for hours and hours, but with this overview that you've put out, where I'm sure that you sit and contemplate what you think's going to happen, Chuck. Mm-hmm. If anything that you could share with us, what you see coming.
What I see coming, I see the United States being completely destroyed as a country.
Yeah. I
see they're already bankrupt.
I mean, they're going to probably drag it on for a couple more years. There's still more money of the middle class to confiscate. Do you think it's that way, or how fast do you think it'll happen?
I don't know how fast it'll happen. All I can do is point to markers and say when you see something like this happening, then you know that it ain't too far away. I mean, it's really hard to put timelines on anything. All you can do is go by like pictures, like when you see, the whole the civilian mindset, the racism and all these issues.
Yeah.
Right. All I can say is what happened prior to the Civil War are happening now, and back then it was about 10 years after that the Civil War broke out.
Yeah.
Right? It was the Lincoln election that was the catalyst for all of that, right? That was what pushed it over the top.
Yeah.
For a lot of these states. Now, if Obama's elected, it could very well happen again. If Obama's reelected, it could be exactly like the Lincoln election in its effect on the rest of the country. I mean, it's sort of like when Jesus says, "When you see this happen and when you see that happen, and then you know the time is near."
Right.
Right. It's like the same thing. When you see these things happen, then you know darn well it's pretty close. I mean, but how long it would actually take to play out, I wouldn't say much more than 10 years.
I mean, the catalyst, I think, is going to be when the entitlements run out in this country. It's going to be something that really puts things over the edge. And how long they're going to keep the food stamps coming and the welfare checks or automatic deposits like we have. I mean, that's what I think is going to be the thing that really...
Well, I think what could be a kickoff, too, would be possibly another Rodney King incident.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right? So
Yeah.
you saw what happened then. You had riots all over everywhere.
Right.
But I think that issues like that.
Yeah, if that would happen now, I mean, things are so much more volatile now than they were then. And yeah, I'm with you. Or worse, it could be worse. Some another cataclysmic 911.
Well, they're already Jackson and Sharpton. They're already talking about, marching in the streets and creating, essentially pushing mob rule in place of the law. Right?
Yeah.
And then you've got like this Louis Farrakhan
I
guy,
know.
right?
I'm not-
Who actually came out just a few days ago and said that that Obama could be assassinated
Yeah.
if he doesn't kind of get with it. So you've got all these things going on, and
Yeah.
they're a perfect parallel to what happened 150 years ago. Absolutely, like in almost every detail. It's astonishing and it's frightening at the same time.
And then we talked about the Reich, the Third Reich, and now the Fourth Reich, which is what this is. If if anything, you can add insight into the church and state aspect of that.
Well, now you're getting into Bible prophecy, and
But as far as
the Bible, okay, here's the bigger picture, right? You have a European power structure, right? They're the European community, like whatever it is, the European Union. That is going to be turned into another resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. The last resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire was under Hitler.
Yeah.
Right? And before him, there were 5 previous resurrections of that church-state system, begun under Charlemagne. Now, they've had peaks and valleys, right? Each peak is called a mountain in prophetic terms. A mountain refers to a government organization, right? A government authority, right? So you've had essentially already 6 resurrections of this Holy Roman Empire. There will be a 7th and final resurrection of that, and that will be the worst of the lot. It's going to be, you're going to see basically a German-dominated Europe. The question is, who gets to play Charlemagne?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah, you're talking about the pale horse, the diverse fourth beast. This is the end. This is the last one.
Well, this is what the Bible calls the beast. Well, the beast of Revelation. That beast is a political entity, a political combine, right? Big and powerful and mean and nasty.
Mean and nasty.
And they are going to go on a global terror, a nuclear global terror. The first people that they're going to go at, because there's a pushing between the king of the north and the king of the south, right? You know that part of Daniel and Revelation.
Yeah.
The king of the south is the Iranian influence, the Iranian sphere, the sphere of influence controlled by Iran, right? Persia. The king of the north is the European conglomerate, which will become the Holy Roman Empire newly established. It will be a German-led Europe.
Wow.
Right? That's what it will be. Just like Hitler, only 10 times worse.
Yeah.
What they want, what Europe wants, is Middle East oil. What they also want is to get rid of radical Islamic influence. So right now, they're pushing to establish diplomatic ties with Syria and Islamic countries that are more moderate and will not really listen to what the Iranians are saying, like Ahmadinejad and the Ayatollahs and that, right?
Uh-huh.
So you have the German government right now is talking about sending its troops into that part of the world. So you've got a newly resurgent militaristic Germany, right?
Yeah.
Germany is starting to push its weight around. And right now they've done with the euro and accomplished with the euro what they could not accomplish with panzers. They've taken over countries, right? They've got Greece now. They've basically bankrupted Greece, and they've put their own Jesuit leader in control of the whole country, right? They've done the same thing in Italy, right? Mario Monti or whatever, Mario something, right? He's now the leader of, they kicked out Berlusconi and put in a Jesuit to lead Italy. And they've done this, and they're doing the same thing in Spain. So they're doing with money what they could not accomplish with bullets.
Right.
And they are just watch the political alignment over the next, over the next few years. Watch how they gel into a unified force, because that's what they're putting together now. And then overlay that political map with the old map of Charlemagne's empire, and it's exactly the same map. That beast, the prophetic beast, you have to look at the 2 legs and the toe and the 10 toes, right? You're going to have 5 countries of Eastern Europe and 5 countries of Western Europe. Right? That's your 10 toes. They're held together. It's a tenuous relationship because you can't mix iron and clay, right? It's a very tenuous relationship, but they're going to join together for the sake of their own perceived security, right? So right now they're starting to combine their economies. Well, they've already done that. Their politics, like all of their laws, and their military. So eventually you're going to find one supergiant European military force under German command. That's what they're building now. How long it takes to actually complete that process, who knows? Right? It could be 5, it could be 10 years, it could be a lot sooner than that. It just depends on how fast they can push things along. But this is eventually the end goal. And once they've established that combine that the Bible calls a beast, right, which is exactly what it is, because it's going to act and behave like a wild, untamed beast, right? And it's going to be led out of the Vatican, because the Vatican gives it its guidance and its direction, right? That's
the woman riding the beast.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. That's the woman riding the beast. It is basically, in Revelation, what they're describing is the final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Right. And that European force is going to go terrassing all over the world. The first people they're going to wipe out, they're going to go against Iran. The Bible calls it like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Right? And once they've got the oil and established their realm of their sphere of influence, as it were, exactly like Hitler went after the North Africa and that part of the world, right? They're setting up their alliances and everything. Whether or not Libya is a part of it or not, who knows, right? But they're setting up their alliances, their Muslim alliances, just like Hitler did, right? Because Hitler set up an alliance with moderate Islam to go against the Jewish populations, right?
Yep.
The same thing's going to happen again, only 10 times worse. Israel, the country called Israel in Bible is called Judah, right? Judah and Israel are 2 separate things. Israel, in so far as the Bible is concerned, is the entire English-speaking world. Right? That's Israel. So yeah, we're going to be chastised as nations because we have strayed so far. And God is going to use that European army as his rod against Israel and against Judah because of our multiplied sins.
Yeah, I'll follow you there.
Right? And then after that, then you've got then after that, then that beast conglomerate will be chastised again by Russia and China. A combined Chinese-Russian force will wipe out that beast entity. And then sometime during that time, you've got the actual return of Christ.
Yeah.
So, well, a lot of stuff is going to come down, and it's not going to be very good because the Bible says that Israel and Judah go into captivity and slavery, and their cities are wiped off the map. That's a pretty scary scenario.
Yeah.
But that's all God's chastisement. So, if people so that's the beast is not a human being.
No.
Right?
It certainly isn't. No,
it's a political. It's a military political conglomerate of 10 countries, right? And the question is, who is going to lead it, right? Well, there's already names being thrown out now. Baron Theodore Gutenberg. Look him up on the internet. He is the Baron of the Holy Roman Empire, right? There's talk of him actually being the modern-day Charlemagne.
Yeah.
That's a good possibility. But the thing is, whoever that man is, he will allow himself to be taken over by Satan, and so his whole attitude and his whole mindset will be fashioned after Lucifer.
Yeah.
So that's what you've got to look forward to, and it's not a good picture. The only thing we can really do is repent and I mean, seriously, repent and lean on God, and not just as individuals, but as a nation.
Yeah, well, I'm of the mind that it isn't about the nation anymore because it's too late. I mean, we've killed 55 million babies. God always gives us 40 years of testing, and Roe versus Wade is next year, January of 2000. I mean, it's just not looking good.
Well, it's not. I mean, but you think that's bad. London is the abortion capital of the world.
Yeah. And then we've got this Summer Olympics coming up now.
Mm-hmm.
The logo is Zion. I mean, there's something big coming. This whole world religious, political religious system is all converging on Jerusalem, and it's going to be very interesting to see it all play out. But it's spiritual.
Well, the Vatican has always wanted Jerusalem. The Vatican has always wanted to relocate back to Jerusalem. I mean, that's where they want to go, right? So by hook or by crook, and they are going to use that unified European military force in order to pull it off.
Yeah, and where do they stand with that now, as far as what you understand, Chuck? I mean, I don't know what to make of the propaganda concerning that.
Well, let's put it this way: the country of Israel, which is biblical Judah, has always been very, very close friends with the United States. They've always trusted the United States as a protector.
Right.
That's changing. The United States is losing its influence all over the world.
Yeah.
Right? All over the world. They're losing their influence. They can no longer throw their weight around like they used to. People are thumbing their noses. North Korea said, we're going to launch our missiles anyway. Nothing you can do about it. And there is nothing that they do about it. They issue proclamations.
Right.
I mean, seriously, that's about as far as it goes. Right? They'll issue proclamations. We don't agree that this should be done, and they'll do it through a UN or wherever, right? But it's all a bunch of blowing air. There's no real force or power or anything behind it. Israel recognizes the fact that they're losing the United States as a protector. They don't trust the United States to be the protector that it used to be. So where are they going to be looking? Germany. Their ancient enemy.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be looking to Germany, and the Bible says that they were going to that Israel and Judah and Germany will be lovers. Only the Germany will turn and and kill off Israel and Judah. So.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's what's in store for the United States. The United States is no longer going to exist and it's not just the United States. It's the British Empire countries.
Yeah.
And Northern Europe, like the Scandinavian countries.
Okay.
Right? The English-speaking peoples, the Jewish peoples, and the Northern European peoples are all Israel. In one way, like Israel and Judah, right?
Yeah.
And those are the ones that God chastises, right, using this very, very huge military force that is just still being put together. Let's put it that way. How long it takes for them to finish it all off, who knows, right? But it's happening on the news every day.
Yeah.
Right? You see one country being absorbed or one country being kicked out of the EU for one reason. I mean, they're reshaping that map to coincide with Charlemagne's original setup. So the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah, it's all very fascinating, and it's and it's really, it all gets back to the spiritual condition of the souls of the Christians. And this is the problem, that people, the Christian, it's when you talk about Israel, we on the show here on Watchman Weekly, we teach that Israel is the Christians, and we've gone into apostasy just like ancient Israel did.
Well,
and
God's wife is the Christian, the true Christians, God's bride, right?
Yeah.
Israel, as a peoples, are the English-speaking and Northern European, like the Scandinavian countries of the world.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all of the English. So from England and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and every other country that was part of the British Empire,
right,
at one time or another, that's all Israel.
Yeah, I mean, on the physical layer, I sure see that. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that at all, because it's here we are today, though, with what Jesus accomplished on the cross, giving us the chance to be born again and become spiritual Israel, and really that's what really matters.
Yeah. Well, spiritual Israel is separate from
Physical.
Yeah.
And but it all works. The spiritual works out into the physical. That's what we see, and it's just so amazing today too, what we see happen.
And Israel and Assyria, historically, biblically, all the way through history, has always been bitter enemies.
Yeah.
Right. And Assyria, if you trace ancient Assyria and watch the migration of those people, you get Germans.
Oh, isn't that something?
Right?
That's really amazing.
And all they and like Hitler going Aryan. Well, take Assyrian, drop the S's, and what do you have?
Yeah, Aryan.
Right. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
They're the same peoples. They don't even call themselves German.
Yeah.
They call themselves Deutsch.
Yeah.
Right? Germany, actually, Germans was a term. I can't remember who initially brought that up, but Germans means like in French, the word for war in French?
Yeah.
Guerre, G-U-E-R.
Oh.
Right? As in guerrilla, little war. It's a French word,
okay.
Right? So German actually means war people.
Wow.
people that commit themselves to warfare. Right? So that's where that the English word German comes from. War people. That's what it means. So yeah, you've got and they trace themselves all the way back to the ancient Assyrians. So that's the one of the little keys that you need in order to understand Bible prophecy. It's not that difficult.
You know, it's not that difficult when you surrender. You know, surrender to the truth, and being able to accept it, whatever you get. And that's what I've learned is the key to loving the truth, not working what you want to believe into your life, because that's the strong delusion, and that's when God turns you over to the strong delusion, and here we are.
Right.
I
will give them over to their own whatevers, and they can suffer the consequences as a result. So.
But this has been a fascinating hour and a half, Chuck. It's been just an absolute pleasure to have you with us, and we'll have to pick it up again, and I'm going to definitely stay in contact with you and ask you to join us again in the future as things develop. Over the summer, it's going to be an interesting summer.
I'll be looking forward to it. Sure.
Yeah.
But your listeners, if they want to go to ctwilcox.com, that's WILCOX.com, there's a lot of material on that site that I was able to get. You've got a number of books that I was able to scan and put up there as free downloads, because to actually find them on online or anywhere, I mean, you're going to pay dearly for them, right? So I figured, okay, well, I'll give them some history and no charge, right? But you can also you can go to there's a link there to buy my book, or you can go to Amazon and type in The Transformation of the Republic, I think, or my name. I'm not too sure which, maybe both, who knows. But you can find it on Amazon, and you can find it at lulu.com, Lulu.
Yeah, Lulu's where I bought mine. Yeah, that's where I found the and I'll put a link to all that on the show there.
Yeah.
Chuck, and we certainly appreciate all the. How long did it take did you work on the book? The thing is amazing.
Oh, at least 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, at least, and a lot of money.
Oh, I betcha. Yeah, but
I mean, some of these that, like I said, those two Samuel Morris books. I mean, you're looking at what, $500 a piece easily for those things.
Are you really?
Right, they're not cheap. I just got abebooks.com, abebooks.com. I went on there and put in a request to find out an original copy of 1835 of that Samuel Morris Foreign Conspiracies Against the Liberties of the United States. You know how much they were charging for that thing? About $6,000 or $7,000.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So all you got to do is download it with one click of the mouse, and you saved yourself that much money.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm grateful, and you have just been incredibly helpful with my own quest for the truth, Chuck, and as I'm trying to navigate the perilous times that we're in. But
that's what it says. What does God say? My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge.
Yeah, and
right?
as the months and years go by, that scripture becomes more and more profound.
Right.
I never knew what that meant until now, because the people that don't want to look are the ones that are. It's not an excuse, It's not an excuse.
No, it's not. Every one of us has an obligation to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
As much as we possibly can, and I think I've put up at least a good starting point anyway.
Yeah.
For people that go to.
Yeah. And we appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye for now.
Okay.
Coming weekly. And until next time, this is Chris Ardern saying goodbye.